Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everything EV podcast, the podcast dedicated to everything electric. In this series, we'll be discussing everything to do with electric travel and electric motorsport. In each episode, you can expect things like regular guests, electric car reviews, and much, much more along the way. Be sure to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from to receive every episode as soon as it's released. We have a very special episode for you today ahead of the Extreme E X3 weekend in Senegal, and we'll be joined by not one but two guests. My first guest today is Ali Russell, the Chief Marketing Officer for Extreme E. Ali has been involved in this revolutionary racing series from its earliest stages, and prior to that has worked for some of the biggest sporting teams and organisations in the UK. He's with us today to talk about the journey of Extreme E and why it's being regarded as one of the most exciting motorsports in the world. So, Ali, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the podcast. For anyone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know what Extreme E is, could you just tell us what it's all about?
Okay, so Extreme E is a sport, but it's so much more than a sport. It's a sport for purpose. And so our purpose is tackling climate change. And we're looking to tackle that by building the general awareness of climate change by racing in the localities that are devastated by climate change. So burnt areas of the Amazon, melted parts of the ice cap, areas which have been eroded through sea level rise, desertification, glacier melts. So each of the races has a location which is suffering. And what we try to do is we try to use the drivers and the team principals and the mechanics and so on to tell the stories of what's going on in these communities, but to tell it through sport, because sports is highly, highly engaging and highly sticky. And that enables us to reach an audience which isn't being reached at the moment. So if you don't watch news and you don't watch documentaries, you don't get a level of understanding of what the planet's going through, and also most importantly how we as a human race can be part of finding solutions and working together on solutions, because it's not one country against the next. It's as a global citizen, we need to find solutions to the biggest threats to humanity.
If we could just rewind the clock a little bit, I was wondering if you could walk us through the story of Extreme E and what the journey's been like in getting the sport to where it is today.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one, because we started Formula E about 9 years ago, and the hypothesis at the time was that I suppose, e-revolution was coming, and that the car industry would move to electric mobility. And for the first 2 years, people thought we were crazy. There was a lack of adoption. And then I don't know if you remember, but there was Dieselgate, which was I think accelerated the adoption of electric vehicles, certainly from the major OEMs. And we went from overnight to having little interest to suddenly a deluge of manufacturers: Porsche, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, NIO, Nissan, Renault, Jaguar, Mahindra, all these companies getting involved, and it was highly, highly successful. And e-mobility is here, so it's not new. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles by two ways. One, making them heroes, showing the agile nature and performance of an EV. But secondly, help the car manufacturers to develop new technology much quicker. And racing has a history of being able to do that. So Formula E has been incredibly successful. It's now majority owned by Liberty Global and by Discovery Communications. And we thought through, I suppose, as co-founders of Extreme E, we thought through opportunities to do extensions and to develop e-mobility in a slightly different way. And what we didn't want to do is just do the easy way out, which was create a version of e-rally or e-rallycross. Or what we wanted to do is take the opportunity to create a future facing sport. And so that sport is 100% electric through zero carbon charging using hydrogen fuel cells. So we've got the technology there. We wanted to tackle the most popular car type and the most polluting car type, which is the SUV. And we wanted to get more involved with the environmental communication. And that was really taking the sport to the people and going to locations that have never had any international sport. So places like Greenland, middle of the Amazon rainforest, Patagonia, middle of the Middle East and Saudi, and the coast of Africa. So all these locations, and that's only this year's locations. We're looking at Himalayas, we're looking at Death Valley, we're looking at, umpteen locations, which all are suffering from climate change and developing a motorsport proposition around it. And we call these our 4 E's. So E for environment, E for electrification, E for equality. And equality and diversity were incredibly important subject areas, because I've believed and we believe that sport needs to be more balanced to represent, I suppose, society today, with men and women working, having the same opportunities, getting involved. And motorsport is perfect because your strength is not an aspect of motorsport, because the car does the driving. It's how brave you are, it's how much skill you have, and it's your dexterity. And there's no doubt in my mind that men and women are exactly the same, but there hasn't necessarily been opportunities to attract females into the sport. They win together, they lose together, and what we always have is a woman driver on the top of the podium, and we always have a woman driver on the bottom of the podium, and we have a male driver. So it's about complete equality. And then the last E is really about entertainment, and it's about making the sport future-faced. So you'll see that our races are very short, and we've taken the inspiration from 2020 cricket, IPL, tie-break tens, forms of sport that are much, much shorter. But what that makes them is far more consumable for a very busy society with a lack of entertainment time. We've got to fight for that, and we've got to make high intensity sport a priority. So having the sport as a short form, abbreviated version allows us to be much broader in terms of the customers that we're bringing in. They're not all hard or fervent motorsport fans. They're lighter sports enthusiasts and tech enthusiasts and adventurers and other types of sectors and segments that wouldn't traditionally watch motorsport. So it makes it really, really interesting. And then we've also populated it with, I call it the Avengers assembled, but we've brought the best of motorsport together. So Jenson Button, who owns his own team and drives. We've got Lewis Hamilton with his own team, X44. We've got Carlos Sainz, who's ex-winner of Dakar and Rally, and we've got Timmy Hansen, World Rallycross, Ekstrom from DTM and Rallycross, and we've got Nico Rosberg, who owns his own team, Rosberg Racing. So we're in a good position that we've brought the royalty of motorsport together to really demonstrate that racing can be part of the communication medium, and it can be part of innovating and creating better solutions. And the electric vehicle and the electric boat and the electric plane are all parts of our vision in terms of how we can make this transition from traditional carbon fuels to electrification.
Okay, great. So that's the history of Extreme E. Now, where are we with this season? We've just had the first X Prix in Saudi Arabia. Where else is the series heading to for this season? And for anyone who doesn't know how the format of Extreme E works, could you also just explain that as well?
Yeah, so there's nine teams involved in the championship. Each team has 2 drivers, and we go to 5 locations. So we had our first race in Saudi Arabia, which was incredibly successful. Had a global coverage of just about 19 million in terms of audience, and actually was sent out to close to 1 billion homes as well. So our media strategy is getting broad awareness, and that's part of the plan, is how do we make this very accessible, either through TV or through digital propositions, so that anyone can watch us anywhere at any time. So you either watch us live, or you watch us on replay, or you watch clips. We make this as available as possible. And that's all part of engaging with a new audience and I suppose building fame. We're off to the coast of Africa, to Dakar. To actually the finishing point of Paris-Dakar was a place called Lac Rose. And we're actually, that's where our next race is in Lac Rose, which is the Pink Lake. And we are arriving there. Most of our staff are over there already. I'm heading over on Monday, and we are racing next weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a 2-day event. So we have qualifying on the Saturday, and then we have the semi-finals and the finals on the Sunday. The first day is primarily time trials, and that is drivers against the clock. And the second day is wheel-to-wheel action with 4 cars in every race. And the great thing is it gives a huge amount of excitement. And it's we say it's like Dakar meets Blue Planet on speed, and that's the sort of, I suppose, the creative vision is how do we bring these incredible locations together with incredible racing in a very modern, contemporary manner to demonstrate the future of sport. So the proposition itself is full of augmented reality, virtual reality, very data heavy, very gamified. So what it looks more like is, it looks like Blue Planet meets esports, and it's pretty incredible. So if you haven't seen it, please get on, tell your friends, and please be part of getting involved, because ultimately what we want is we want people to enjoy it. Sustainability can be fun, and what we want to do is to bring the fun into exploring this, to make it engaging. And then, the serious undertones are that we have some challenges. So each location we go to, we try to, in our own way, put the location back together again and lead. And people say, well, why are you doing it? And the point is our brand is all about action. So it's all about doing it. So we're improving electric vehicles. We're making them better. We're working with the OEMs to do that. And we're doing that through racing, but ultimately we're also telling the symptoms of, let's say, sea level rise. And in Senegal, for instance, our legacy program is planting over 1 million mangroves. So we've already planted 500,000. We've got another 500,000 to go, but they're 10 times better than trees at storing carbon. So they are, people talk about carbon capture. We have a lot of technology, and that's called mangroves and trees and so on. And so we're planting them, and what they are is incredibly good as flood defenses against the rising sea level, and actually also help the biodiversity, because they're perfect locations for nurseries to grow a wide biodiversity in locations where they're planted. So we're really happy with the work we're doing with Oceanum, and then we're working with a NGO called Ecozone, which is all about upcycling, and it's all about perceptions of trash and getting people to A, pick up the trash, but B, how can that be used in a better way? So they're using ocean plastic to build public facilities, so whether it's schools or hospitals or clinics or bus depots or whatever it may be, changing something from a plague which plagues the world, which is ocean plastic, into taking it and using it to have a second life, to make it useful again, and in a very relevant way. So we do replanting of the Amazon rainforests in Brazil. We work with UNICEF in the Arctic to educate the locals on the impact of climate change, and also how they can be empowered to deal with it. We're working with a wildlife project in the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia, focusing on green turtles and the challenges they have around rising sea level, meaning that half their eggs, or 80% of the eggs, actually die because they're buried underwater. And then the other aspect is the denomination of sex is affected by the water temperature change. So these are really real threats in each of these locations. And we can't do everything, but what we can do is start and put seed money into these. And then what we hope is the businesses that get involved, the OEMs, the individuals, the fans, all come together, aggregate and build that. But most importantly, we want to teach people how they can do small things in their daily lives, which help them to be more carbon neutral themselves. And that can be from walking to work, to using bikes, to buying an electric vehicle. And we work together with the UN and with Count Us In, which is a really nice project, which you can find out all about on our website, which is advising our fans to get more involved and empowering them. So there is a very strong entertainment product that we're building, but there's a very strong purpose at the back end of this, and it's how we can all work together.
Just to go back to something you mentioned earlier, one of the goals of the series was to tackle the least environmentally friendly vehicle, the SUV, and to make that electric and to make those the cars that were used in the series. Now, in one of the last episodes, we were talking to Williams Advanced Engineering about their involvement with Extreme E, but I was wondering if you could tell us about the vehicles themselves and just how powerful and how fast they are and how they're able to cope with the extreme environments they're used in.
Yeah, it's a super interesting one, because I used to put Formula One drivers into a Formula E car, and they used to get out of the car and they were pretty much underwhelmed, to be honest. It was more akin to F3 or F2. And what I think has been amazing on this is I'm putting people like Sebastian Loeb, 9-time World Rally Champion, people like Carlos Sainz in the car, and they get out of the car and they go, wow. And the reason they go, wow, is because we are on, let's say, third generation of electrification now. And the performance of these cars is incredible, and it's actually better than the equivalent for the combustion engine. So the torque is incredible. The speed, we go 0 to 60 in just over 4 seconds. The top speed's around about 125 miles per hour. It's 550 horsepower, so it's a beast of a car. We've got a niobium chassis, which is lighter and stronger than steel. Continental tires, help us through all terrains. You mentioned Williams and the battery, but again, it is an incredible bit of engineering. And then you talked about SUVs, as each of the manufacturers can redo the shell of the car, which morphs into being a consumer car. So, for instance, General Motors are involved with the e-Hummer. You've got Seat in with Cupra, and you've got Jensen Button working with Lotus and Lotus Engineering. So the amount of interest from manufacturers is growing already in the first season, and that's really nice to see. And for me, if you were to say what is probably the biggest gas guzzling car in the world, it would probably be the Hummer. So to have a proposition like the Hummer, which is well loved and well liked as a product type, but to move that to an all electric version, I think is part of progress. And that for me is what feels good, is how do we help these companies market e-mobility far more effectively? Because at the moment people think of a Leaf or a Prius, or some of maybe the less exciting cars which happen to be electric. And what we want to do is challenge the perception. And I think Tesla's done a very good job of that. I think Porsche's now coming in. There's a lot more everyday models, as is talked about, was the Hummer, the Cupra, and that really helps us to engage with people in their daily lives. E-mobility is here, and it's here now.
Just off the back of that, how do you think electric racing series like Extreme E are going to shape the future of all motorsport?
Yeah, I think the dam is burst, in that you see very little interest in investing in combustion engines. So I think the view is the electric motor is here to stay, and the majority of investment in from the OEMs is now in electrification. I still think there's debates amongst that. You've got manufacturers like Hyundai, you've got Toyota, that are looking at hydrogen fuel cell as the source of powering these electric motors. You've got lithium-ion batteries. And what we've tried to do is to stay relevant. So our point of view for electric racing is, not to get too fixated on the technology, but to actually fulfill the role of being the test bed for new technology, new R&D. So we've got lithium-ion batteries at the moment, but we've got hydrogen fuel cell charging those batteries. So we've almost got 2-in-1 technologies as part of the championship. And then we're using renewable energy like solar to actually create the green hydrogen, which then we use to charge the batteries. And then we ultimately, the byproduct is water, which we then use with Karsha to wash the cars themselves.
Okay, now for anyone wanting to find out more and to become more involved with Extreme E, how do they go about doing that?
First thing is watch us. So 5 times a year we have races. I think you mentioned before, in between those races, we've got the Electric Odyssey, and that's an incredibly good program that goes into a lot more depth on the drivers themselves, the adventure, what's going on in the ship in terms of science, what's going on in the locations, the legacy projects, and so on. And also 365 days a year, we have different content that's going out on our social platforms. So follow us on your platform of your choice, because we exist everywhere: TikTok, Snap, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, VK, Instagram, Weibo. We are relevant globally. And then, also, you can get involved on our website and read a bit more, and maybe even get involved and count us in. So, I think the first thing is start being interested, take an opportunity to follow a team or a driver and enjoy the sport as it is. And then hopefully what you'll find is that we can create great entertainment at the same time is helping people to make that transition to a more balanced future.
Okay, and just to finish, could you give us a quick 30-second summary of Extreme E and tell us why we should all tune in at the weekend for the X Prix in Senegal?
Yeah, Extreme E is the most exciting short-form motorsport on the planet, and it will enable us to create the technologies that allow us to mitigate the impact of climate change.
Many thanks to Ali for coming on to the podcast, but now it's time for the second guest of this special episode of the Everything EV podcast. Up next is Oliver Bennett of the Xite Energy Racing Extreme E team. Ollie has a rich background in racing and is now at the forefront of the Extreme E series, and he's here to tell us what it's like being in the thick of all the action. So, Ollie, you drive for the Xite Energy Racing Extreme E team, formerly Hispano Suiza. Now, my first question is, what's it like to be right at the heart of one of the most exciting motorsports in the world?
Yeah, it's actually pretty incredible to be in this sort of forefront of motorsport with the obviously the core technology being electric, which we see developing so fast now in the world of the automotive world, I guess. So as a racing driver, I'm really proud to be at this leading edge. It's nice to see what is happening, not only with electric racing, but also with electric cars. So no, it's very exciting. Obviously, the places we go to, the events we drive at, and the people we race against, it's all a pretty cool experience for sure.
Obviously, it's a new experience as well, and with that comes a new team of engineers and mechanics and all things like that. How have you found working with the new team? What have they been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great experience, and probably by the time this podcast come out, our team's probably renamed now to HS Xite Energy. So we're having a bit of a team rebrand going on, which hopefully you'll all see in Senegal, which is going to be pretty cool. But yeah, the team are great. It's mixed of some of us based from here in the UK, and also some of our Spanish counterparts on Christine's side from Spain. So it's a good mix. It's took me a while to learn a few Spanish words. They all say I've got to learn Spanish, so I've started to try and do that. But we've got a good atmosphere in the pits, and I've worked with some of them before in rallycross, so it's almost home from home really. So yeah, it's been a good experience.
How is your Spanish coming along? What have you been able to pick up so far?
The biggest ones I'm trying to learn is just to say hello and no thank you. They're the two I'm picking up on at the minute. But you can generally pick up what they're saying, but I'm definitely not fluent yet.
Amazing. Now we'll come on to the series itself in a little while, but before we do that, could you just walk us through your career so far and how you've ended up where you are today in Extreme E?
Yeah, so I started racing when I was pretty young, actually, probably like 6, 7 years old, which was motocross. So two wheels, off road, quite dangerous, which my mother didn't like too much. And they managed to get pretty good at that and competitive and race across Europe up until the age of about probably 17, 18. So I had a really good time doing that, traveling the world, racing and things. But went to university at 18. So that's sort of when the racing sort of took a backdrop as I was at university. Done the 3 years there studying business and sports nutrition, and then after leaving, just got the itch again to be racing. Really, I've done it all my life every weekend, so started to look into different forms of racing. Stumbled across rallying, which I was always a big fan of, and got. Done a few rallies, and that came ninth in my first one at 60 cars in the event. And I had a really good time doing stage rallying before stumbling on rallycross, which is basically a dead ringer for motocross, but it's in cars. You all start off on a grid, all start off in a line. You do your 4 laps, and you've got a winner at the end of it. So it's quite similar to what I was used to racing on bikes. So got really drawn into that, and have spent the last sort of 4 or 5 years now racing in rallycross. I got sort of 8 podiums in my first year, and there was 9 events. So really took to it quite well, and it's just gone from there really, and it's gone onto the World Rallycross, which has led me ultimately to the final destination now. Well, not final, but at least where I'm at the minute with the Extreme E. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, you mentioned there that you're part of a renewable energy company. Could you give us a bit of an overview of your involvement in that company and how that works alongside the Extreme E team?
Yeah, of course. I mean, My Energy joined us recently before the first event, which obviously they're a technology solution provider really in the EV space, I guess. Predominantly looking at EV chargers, but also have different solutions to manage power in software through your home and things. So really interesting company, and really at the forefront of this move to electrical infrastructure really for your home, for your car and charging and things. So yeah, been talking with Jordan for quite a while there at My Energy about doing different things. And I said, look, we're doing this Extreme E. It's going to be televised globally. There's going to be some crazy things going on, and we can really showcase this movement of sustainability and electric mobility. So they were super keen to jump on board, which was great for us. And yeah, it's been a great partnership really. We're looking to do different things with them in the EV space. They're coming to our test day in a couple of days' time here in the UK to have some fun with us. So yeah, it's been a great partnership, and I think it's great to see these new types of sponsors coming on board in racing that are not the traditional guys, like the fuel companies and different things. It's more these new tech and innovative companies coming on board, which is great to see.
Okay, amazing. And now Extreme E takes place in some of the most remote locations all over the world, and you're driving these massive, great big electric SUVs. Considering your background in rallycross, what's it like to make that switch and now be behind the wheel of an Extreme E car?
Yeah, it's such a difference really to what we're used to. The rallycross are quite small combustion engine cars, very powerful, 600 horsepower, and it's a mix of tarmac and dirt, but not extreme circuits. They're based on race circuits, so although it looks extreme, it's quite a smooth service. So that's what I'm used to. And then you come to Extreme E, which is these huge, great trucks. They're like sort of 6 foot high, taller than me. You need a ladder almost to get in the thing with these great ginormous tires, which are made from dandelions, which I still find mad, which is why I said it. But these massive, huge tires, and obviously a battery inside the car makes no noise, but it's just as fast as my small rallycross car, which is to see it's quite unbelievable when you see these things move. They look like massive sort of Mars rover trucks or something like from another planet. So yeah, they're pretty interesting cars themselves. And then you've got the circuit, which is based in the middle of nowhere. I've only seen one so far, which was Saudi. And it was just breathtaking. These huge valleys between the rocks, huge valleys where with the dust bowls underneath and the sanding, everything, big dunes, massive drops, very spectacular. So the first event was eye-opening, and we're off to Senegal shortly for the second event, and I'm sure that's going to be just as crazy on the beach there.
Just touching on Saudi there, obviously that was your first event and the first for the series. I just wanted to get your thoughts on how it went. What was it, a big learning curve, or were you just glad to finally be racing in Extreme E?
Both really. I mean, yeah, huge learning curve. New team, new people, new event, new ways of doing things, even to get to the starting grid. How do you do that? How does the start work? How do you do a lap? Where do you end up? We've got a driver switch halfway through, which of course me and Christine have to swap over in the car, and then the second person does their lap. So yeah, really a lot to take in. And obviously for me, the circuit was long. It was 8 or 9 kilometers. I'm used to sort of a 1 or 2 kilometer track. So to try and remember that, to go between these flags and different things, that was definitely something that it took me a bit of time to get used to. But no, all in all, it was just a breathtaking event, really. And I think it's really interesting to see how the different format of a guy and a girl on the team, how that changes the team dynamics, and how we try and use that to our advantage in the weekend. So yeah, it was definitely interesting to see how it all sort of planned out.
Just off the back of that, could you talk us through your partnership with Christine and how you found working with her so far?
Yeah, no, it's been great. We're sort of talking cheese, really. I'm quite sort of laid back, sort of take the day as it comes, and she's quite the opposite, really full on and full of energy. So it's quite an interesting team dynamic, but it works quite well, really. And we sort of bring each other along. So no, it's great to be driving with her, and her skill base is really high. We're both. I think we came fifth in that first event, put in some really good times, no accidents, which was a big problem for that weekend. A lot of people having some quite big crashes. So no, it's been great, really, and we're actually doing 3 or 4 days testing together in the couple of days coming now before we head to Senegal, which should be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, like you just said, it's off to Senegal next, and as we mentioned earlier, the series itself is almost defined by the places it goes to all around the world in these remote locations. When you look at the rest of the calendar, is there a particular place that stands out to you? And out of all of them, which do you think will be the most challenging?
Yeah, we get asked this question a lot as drivers, obviously, and I think it's such a difficult one to answer, just because even if what I told you I thought Sadie would be like, it was nothing like I thought. I was thinking like, big dunes and desert and things, when really there was these huge canyons and valleys and huge drops. So like, it's really hard to think what they're going to be like. I mean, for me, Iceland sounds the coolest, just because there's ice, it's cold, it's a different climate that I've never raced in before. Obviously, sand and mud and things you can drive before as a driver, but the ice in Iceland I think is going to be pretty incredible. But yeah, I'm excited to see all of them, and I was quite surprised how just extreme these tracks were. Now, I knew it was in the name, but I thought, all right, well, it's going to look good on TV, I'm sure. But how extreme can they make it? And to see, some of the obstacles, the drops, the terrain, it is actually pretty crazy. So I think they're all going to have their own little quirk, if you know what I mean. So yeah, no, I'm interested to see them all.
Absolutely. And now, out of all of the things we've touched on so far, from the locations to the car itself, I just wanted to get your opinion on what the best thing about racing in Extreme E is and what you found to be the most challenging aspect of it so far.
I mean, it's the interesting part of it really is getting used to the electrical vehicle, and how do you drive those at speed. They've got different ways that they apply the torque, I guess, than a combustion engine. Combustion engines, you really wind them up, don't you? The faster you go, the faster they get, sort of thing, as the RPM builds. Where you don't have that in these electric trucks. It's just instant power all the time. So that's the thing for the driver, to really learn how do you manage that power in the different environments. I mean, in the desert, it wasn't too bad because you can use pretty much all of the power, because the sand just moves. So you've got to, more power the better almost. But I think for some of the circuits, probably like Iceland or the muddy places, power is not always your friend, I guess, and you can almost have too much power in those sort of conditions. So I think as the drivers, that's what we're working on. In the setup of the car, it is quite tricky. It's a heavy car. Obviously, it's got a heavyweight battery in it. It's a big car, so it's quite a difficult thing to maneuver at high speeds. So I think, you probably saw it catch a few people out in Saudi, hitting some of those graph tufts, and before you know it, you're on your roof. So you've got to be careful, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing we can try and do through this season is it's going to be survival, really. Who finishes and gets on the leaderboard and keeps finishing.
Now, Extreme E is more than just another racing series. There's a lot of environmental and sustainability objectives that come with the championship. Having been involved with a renewable energy company, how big a part did those environmental goals play in your decision to come on board with the series?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge part of the series, and it was sort of a personal point for me of joining the series. I mean, in a company that I helped run manage was a renewable energy company, so I'm well versed on sort of renewable technologies and in the way the world is transitioning to sort of carbon zero or even emission free fuels and things. So for me, it was really a way of seeing the future coming. I thought if I could be at the forefront of seeing some of these technologies and in the way the world's going, it'd be really beneficial. And I think the aim of the series, really, how I see it, is to just bring more people into sport. They can enjoy watching a sport, but also then learn about the environment. And I think, there's you can teach these things in textbooks and things, but it's not always the most interesting to learn about. So I think if we can combine a sport with a way to learn about the environment and the planet, I think everyone's going to be, net benefit from it. So I think that's the biggest positive of the series that I've seen. And I think, already in Saudi, we were learning about the effects of the pollution on the beach there, how it's destroying the homes where the turtles are based and things. I mean, you can really see all around the world, although we're here in little old England with not very nice weather, you can see the things we do here actually do have impacts around the world. So to learn about that and then hopefully show it to everyone on TV while racing in these different places is a pretty cool experience and a nice thing to be a part of.
Now, another part of the Extreme E series is the Electric Odyssey documentary, which has just launched. How important is that in raising the profile of the sport, and do you think it's going to have an impact in making Extreme E not just one of the most dominant electric motorsports, but one of the most dominant motorsports in general?
Yeah, I do really, and I think you can see with this Odyssey series the similarities there to what Formula One has done well with the Netflix Drive to Survive, and I'm sure they're taking leads out of that book to really bring it alive for the teams and also what we're doing in these remote locations. And I think, as all motorsports going to probably go electric. Motorsport generally follows what the OEMs want to do because half the time they pay the bills. And they obviously want to advertise their new electric cars to the public so the public can be interested in buying them. So there's a massive push from that side. And I think coming with that is how do you race electric cars? And I think Extreme E has got the perfect balance for that. It's got the off-road, the craziness, the close racing, the male and female aspect, the electric aspect, the sustainability story. I mean, to join all that together, nothing's been done like that before. Even looking at sort of other electric motorsports like Formula E, yes, they're cool electric cars in cities and there's all of those elements, but it doesn't quite bring all these aspects together like Extreme E does. So I think it's got a very strong future in it, and I think for sure as far as off-road motorsport goes, it's going to be one of the biggest in the world.
Exactly, and now electric motorsport is growing in general, not just with Extreme E, but with Formula E as well. I just wanted to get your thoughts on why electric motorsport is so popular at the moment, and if we're at a turning point where electric motorsport is able to overtake traditional forms of motorsport.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely going to overtake it if it hasn't already. I mean, even you can see Extreme E and Formula E, but even touring cars in the UK are pushing down hybrid and electric routes. Rallycross, what I originally done, FIA World Rallycross will be going electric in the near future. Even in the British Rallycross, there was some electric cars racing last week with the petrol cars. So you can see the push is already there, and that's the way it's going to go. And I think you'll get then the petrol combustion engines being support series or more grassroots series is the electric technology filters down and the price gets similar to the petrol cars. So it's certainly going to be the future of motorsport in the way it goes.
Okay, now you've been involved in racing with internal combustion engine vehicles and now with electric vehicles as well. Do you prefer any particular one, or are they just completely different and you can't compare them?
They're very different, really. I mean, Extreme E is so different to any motorsport that probably has ever been before. Going to these remote locations and you're just putting flags in basically the middle of nowhere and you drive around them. It's a very different experience to what I'm used to, which is being at a circuit. There's hospitality, there's garages, there's facilities. You can drive out and drive somewhere if you want and drive off and go and do some other things, usually near and around cities. Whereas this, it does very much feel like we are camping in the middle of nowhere. And we're being film racing around these extreme environments. So super different, both enjoyable for different reasons, I guess. It's nice to be, in a circuit with fans in stadiums and look up at all the people. But likewise, to see what we're doing in the middle of nowhere in these remote locations and showcasing that is also pretty cool. So yeah, if I could do both, I definitely would.
That's all for this episode, and a big thank you goes to both Ali and Ollie for coming onto the podcast. You can watch the full weekend of racing in Senegal by heading over to the Extreme E website, and you can also keep up to date with all the action on EV Powered's website, evpowered.co.uk. As always, be sure to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from to make sure you get every episode as soon as it's released. Thank you once again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.